So, Joe, you've led organizations through complex integrations, including the acquisition of the environment and infrastructure business of John Wood Group. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned about navigating mergers and acquisitions in this AEC space?
Right. I think first and foremost, Anthony, even before the acquisition comes to fruition, is really important to look at not just the technical capacity of what an organization might add to a WSP, not just its client base, the resources it has, but what is the culture? What is the cultural underpinning of this organization? What do they stand for? What's really the mission, the values, the purpose that comes through from that organization? And will that be compatible with the acquiring organization? Will that be compatible with WSP? So we spend a lot of time in our conversations with firms that would make.
There are so many mergers and acquisitions going on today in the architecture, engineering, and construction industries. Did you know that many of these mergers succeed or fail not because of systems, but because of how effectively people are integrated? In today's episode, I'm joined by Joe Sczurko. Joe is a licensed professional engineer and U.S. region president at WSP in the U.S. Joe is going to talk about how strong leadership drives integration, innovation, and long-term success. We'll talk about what it takes to lead large multidisciplinary teams, how sustainable infrastructure is reshaping project delivery, and the critical skills civil engineering leaders need to stay ahead of shifting client demands. So if you're leading or aspiring to lead in the AEC industry, this conversation is packed with practical insights that you won't want to miss. Now, before we jump in, I do want to tell you about our AEC PM Connect events. They are designed for firm leaders who want to elevate project delivery, build strong teams, and scale with confidence. These events provide an avenue to connect with other project delivery leaders in the industry. We currently have events in Kansas City and New Jersey, with more coming soon. Visit aecpmconnect.com and get registered today. I'm your host, Anthony Pisano, and this is the Civil Engineering CEO. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Joe Sczurko is a licensed professional engineer. He is also the U.S. region president at WSP in the U.S. Joe, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO show.
Oh, Anthony, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, really excited to get to chat with you here, Joe. So maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey to your current role at WSP.
Right. I went to college, university, for a degree in civil engineering. I felt back when I graduated high school, I looked at all the different things that civil engineers did, from bridges and roads and water, and that motivated me. And I thought, hey, here's a career opportunity. I liked math and science, but I also liked the arts and humanities, but I kind of envisioned that civil engineering, I could contribute to society because I saw how many different things that civil engineers did in designing things. Went on from an undergrad degree to a graduate degree in civil and environmental engineering, and I started as an entry-level engineer, early graduate, doing geotechnical, geoenvironmental studies. And at that time, when I graduated, it was really the dawn of the beginning of the environmental engineering push, most specifically in my case, hazardous waste. So that was the early part of my career, and it launched a journey of progressively gaining more exposure and more experience to become a project manager. Early in my career, I was fortunate enough to do an assignment outside the United States, worked overseas in Europe for a bit, and began then a progression of really the business side of the business. I think early on, my mentors commented that I was good technically, but I asked good questions about the business side of the business, how we were in client relationships and how we grow as a business. And not unlike a lot of other people, progressed into operations management at the office level, regional level. And then toward the mid part of my career, got a lot of opportunity and exposure around client account management, business strategy, client development. And it was in 2019 when Wood Environment and Infrastructure, I joined the Wood organization at that time, put me into a role of being involved in wood on a global basis. So that was really my first global operational experience where I ran Wood's consulting business, which was much more than just civil and environmental engineering. At that time, it included automation and some mining businesses and a big play in subsea and hydrocarbons. And then in 2021, Wood decided to transact the Wood E&I business. I made a decision, being an environmental professional, to go with that process and lead that sale process. And that's how WSP acquired Wood E&I and how I joined the WSP family. Initially went on to run the earth and environment business. And then in April of 2024, I was named president of WSP in the United States, which is a terrific role and gets me back to so many different applications of engineering, civil engineering through our transportation business, environmental engineering through E&E, vertical structures, systems, MEP through our property and buildings business, our energy business, which has a lot of mechanical, power related folks. So I'm having a great time being involved in leading that business, which provides so many different engineering services and has so many challenges from an engineering management and delivery to our clients' basis.
That's great. And Joe really just gave us a great window into one career path for a civil engineer being, we start off very technical. We come out of school doing our calculations and our reports. Then maybe we get into project management. Then we maybe get more into people leadership, maybe a department, then the business strategy. And so it's interesting to kind of hear, Joe take us through that and some of the opportunities that he had. But coming again full circle to be able to really lead the engineering teams, right? And the different services that you're offering at WSP, because I do think that there's something to be said about being a leader in engineering and understanding what your team is doing in the field, right? And on the plans. I think that can give you like another level of leadership, if you will.
Yeah, Anthony, absolutely. And I would tell you there's two ways that I continue to make sure that I'm conversant, knowledgeable, and understanding what's going on with the teams and doing their technical work. One, I still spend a lot of time on site visits. Obviously, I go to those site visits for purposes of interfacing with our clients, interfacing with our technical teams, but I take a lot of interest in the curiosity of what are we doing? What is the technical challenge that we're involved in? What key problems are we trying to solve? Now, today, digital technology provides a whole completely different avenue of the technical challenge, how to go about solving technical issues. So I spend a lot of time with our teams at project sites, trying to learn and understand what their technical challenges are. I'm also involved in a lot of project reviews. And through those project reviews, maybe we're looking to bid a project, or maybe we're a milestone on a project, working for a client. It's important for me to understand, again, what is the technical underpinning of how we're trying to solve the problems. And it's those kinds of sessions I interface not only with our project teams, but people from our subject matter expert community, people from our practice area network community. And I get a chance to listen, to challenge, to hear from them. What is it that is state of the art technically? What is it that we're really trying to do to solve client issues, advance our technical profession, participate together with other professionals that are outside of the WSP organization in many cases to really benchmark where's our technical practices going. I've maintained two registrations, two licenses, and I tell folks openly that part of the reason I've maintained that, even though I don't practice day to day, is I want to show to our organization and be a standard bearer of how important technical excellence, technical expertise is for technical practitioners. For many people, their journey will just be as subject matter experts, and they can rise through our organization in that way. But even if you choose to get into the business side of the business, as I have, technical proficiency and technical excellence, it is a fundamental underpinning of what we deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of key takeaways that I'd like to reinforce from what Joe just said is if you're a technical engineer, a civil engineer with aspirations for management, I would say don't rush the technical part of your career, as Joe just mentioned. All the stuff that you're kind of plugging through and learning is going to really come back to be very beneficial when you get to that management place, if you will. And then I really like Joe's point about even when you are at that leadership level, staying plugged in and understanding the trends in the industry, right? Because, when you were a designer 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's not the same anymore. So for you to be able to have intelligent conversations with your clients and your project stakeholders, you're going to need to be plugged into those things and have that pathway with your team. So I think those are a couple of really important. I think sometimes as civil engineers, we just want to get to management right away. And you're building a great foundation to be a great manager and a great leader by going through and really developing yourself as a technical professional from the
Absolutely.
beginning.
Absolutely. Great summary, Anthony.
So, Joe, you've led organizations through complex integrations, including the acquisition of the environment and infrastructure business of John Wood Group. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned about navigating mergers and acquisitions in this AEC space?
Right. I think first and foremost, Anthony, even before the acquisition comes to fruition, is really important to look at not just the technical capacity of what an organization might add to a WSP, not just its client base, the resources it has, but what is the culture? What is the cultural underpinning of this organization? What do they stand for? What's really the mission, the values, the purpose that comes through from that organization? And will that be compatible with the acquiring organization? Will that be compatible with WSP? So we spend a lot of time in our conversations with firms that we might think about bringing into the WSP family. We spend a lot of time talking about the culture. What is it? And looking for examples of how that culture lives. A little while ago in our conversation, we spoke about technical. And that absolutely is one aspect of the culture that I specifically take a look at in an organization. And that goes beyond just the number of engineers they have, the number of mechanicals they have, the number of process engineers they have. It's really, well, how do you train and develop technical expertise? How do subject matter experts progress in the organization? What kind of forums do you have inside the organization to have technical experts communicate with each other, learn from each other? Again, all those things happen very early on, well before a deal gets announced. Once we move to a stage where we've made a decision on a transaction, then it's the planning aspect, Anthony, really understanding the pace at which the integration of the business needs to occur. And for a smaller organization, yes, that can be a quicker timeline. Maybe for a larger acquisition, that's a longer timeline. But being in sync with the acquired organization in terms of what the timeline should be, and really making sure we touch all the bases, because integration is not just, hey, let's unplug your financial accounting system and plug it into ours. It's
Right.
way deeper than that. It's not just, hey, let's take your client manager and all of a sudden they're going to work with this client manager from our company. It's way deeper than that. It really takes time to be respectful, to really think through how all the different technical aspects, client aspects, project management aspects, financial aspects, human resource aspects, marketing aspects, how should they all come together? And having really honest, candid, two-way conversations on that. And then I think the final point I've learned and a takeaway from the acquisitions is once the decision has been made to make the acquisition and the deal is closed, to really begin to quickly front load communication at the grassroots level, the people that are serving the clients, the people that are doing the work. It can't be open season. You don't want just haphazard communications. You want to give some guidance to, okay, how are we going to work together? How are we going to work together on joint clients? How are we going to take your practice in structures and blend it with our practice in structures? How are we going to take your practice in mechanical, blend it together with our, whatever the disciplines are? I really work on bringing at the grassroots level those people together, because usually we find so much commonality, so much energy and excitement to work with new peers, so much excitement around bringing new capabilities to clients, that promoting that grassroots interaction and putting it through the lens of the client is really, I think, an enhancement onto any transaction, any deal, and any integration. So it's really those three components that I mentioned that we try to focus in on in our M&A playbook within WSP.
That's great. And I always like to ask that question whenever I get the chance to talk to someone in Joe's position who's been involved with these, because when you step back and look at an acquisition, it can make a ton of sense, right?
Yeah.
This company acquires this company, but there's a lot that goes into it to bring it across the finish line in a positive way that can make it last for the long term in a positive way. And I think that we don't do mergers and acquisitions, but we do a lot of PM development work and leadership development work with firms. And when you think about it from the perspective, to Joe's point of the person delivering the projects, interacting with the client, if they work for a firm, let's say that's acquired by WSP, there's a lot of things that can go through their heads, right? Like, oh, this could be really good for my career, a lot of opportunities. This could be really bad. Maybe, I don't know anything about this company. So I like the idea of having a really well thought out integration plan ahead of time and being able to communicate that, right, to everyone involved, because that's going to help them to say, okay, wow, sounds like this company that acquiring us has a really good plan of how they're going to integrate us. And there can be a lot of opportunity here. And I would imagine, Joe, that can completely change the way that everything goes because of their mindset coming into it.
Absolutely. And, it really depends on the kind of business that we're acquiring, but we wouldn't acquire and we don't acquire companies unless we see the strategic fit, the client fit, and the cultural fit. Now, there'll be cases such as Power Engineers, one of our recent acquisitions, where their capability in power was so substantial that really we stood up our power and energy business on the back of Power Engineers because they really, through the number of people they had, the client relationships, the expertise they had, we were really able to work with them on framing Power Engineers coming into WSP and leading our power and energy practice across the US, which is really exciting for them because they get to join a larger company, more skills, more clients, more capabilities, but really get to, in all honesty, run how we're doing our power and energy business. In other case, we may add or acquire a smaller business where there may be a boutique engineering capability. And it doesn't mean they're subservient to us. Instead, they're coming into our organization, they're uplifting our capability, perhaps within one of our other practice areas. And that's why it's so important to understand what's going to be the mission of that acquired business, what kind of opportunities can we present to their people, and to help work with them through change. Because whether you're a large company that's being acquired or you're a smaller organization with some specialty skills, you're going to undergo some change in any form of acquisition, in any form of transition. And so during that integration period and after acquisition, we spent a lot of time on change management, on educating, on learning, and also looking at situations where we can take some really good practices that acquired company does and import them into our organization. So that's part of just kind of continually refreshing, continually learning and exploring what could we do better through maybe an acquired company in the way of processes or skills or capabilities.
That's great. That's a real, continuous development mindset
Mm,
by WSP to be able to
really
say, hey,
important.
listen, we can help them when we bring them on board and they can probably help us too, right?
Really important. There's some wonderful things that smaller organizations do. I know when Woody and I, when we were acquired, we had a mentor app. And we brought that mentor app to WSP. They didn't have one.
Wow.
Power does some things with regard to training and development of their professionals, which we are beginning to adopt inside of WSP. And then there's individual talent. There's people. I chalk myself up to being one of those. I mean, I came into to WSP from Wood in 2022, late 2022. And here I am running the entire WSP US business, a couple of years later. Um, our head of IT is somebody that came out of the Power Engineers organization. So spotting talent, spotting processes, spotting good things that acquired firms do, and being humble enough to import those and utilize them is another important aspect of M&A in my mind.
So, Joe, you've mentioned, of course, clients a few times now, and we all know, driving value for clients is really important to long-term growth. But client needs in the civil infrastructure world are, of course, evolving rapidly. So, how can you ensure that your teams, that your leaders are kind of staying aligned and responsive to these shifts in client needs?
So first and foremost, it's at the grassroots organic level with those interactions with clients. Um, we in WSP in the US have established a pretty advanced client account leadership organization and structure around client account leadership. We've identified our clients in that way by tiers. We train our client account leaders in the fundamental principles around client account management, client account leadership, to be able to ask the right questions, to have the right dialogue with clients. And client relationships are different than selling to clients. We find that the sell to clients leave short those honest conversations, that dialogue, that necessary interface with clients. We're really learning about their needs. You're learning about their plans for the future. You're learning about what challenges they have in a business as a business, and how they're evolving as a business. And those honest conversations, we put a lot of our responsibility in the hands of our client account leaders. And for our big accounts, those could be folks that are dedicated to that client full time, but even all the way down to our seller doers and our seller doer relationships. We spend a lot of time training them on how to have relationships with clients so they're continually learning and evolving in learning what the clients have for needs and changes in their business. In addition to that, we have sponsors, and I'm myself a sponsor of several accounts where independently we go to have zippered relationships with our clients, and have honest conversations again around what's driving them. We ask for feedback continually, the quality of our performance. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? For many of our clients, we have client workshops, sometimes on an individual basis, but sometimes in groups of clients. So sometimes we use benchmarking, bringing a group of clients together and have honest conversations with them and facilitate discussions and dialogues, again, just to hear what are the trends driving them as a business or driving them as an industry. What are some of the near-term challenges they have? What are some of their unmet needs right now, both through providers like ourselves, but also in other aspects of their supply chain, because we often touch other aspects of their supply chain. So I guess, Anthony, I would summarize on the client front, we use a variety of forums and communications led by our client account managers to have that routine and regular dialogue with a client that goes beyond just the singular project we're working on. We're really trying to get at the heart of what's evolving in their organization that we need to keep pace with. What are some unmet needs? What's going to be their future over the next 3 years in terms of CapEx spend, in terms of how they're embedding digital technology and digital into what they do. And we often find as we have those conversations with clients, just listening, they open up and they're quite transparent about their future needs.
That's great. I really love that approach. And I love that you take it on many levels, like the grassroots approach where the PMs and those serving the clients directly day to day are getting to connect with them. But then at the same time, your leadership at a higher level is connecting with them. Like you said, maybe bringing clients together and, really be able to think about it on different levels, which is great. And I think the one thing that I'll reinforce for our listeners, who a lot of them are probably those project leaders, right? Up and coming leaders, you're doing business development and relationship building every day while you're delivering projects. And I think sometimes we forget about that because we say, hey, we got to hit our schedule. We got to hit our budget. That's important. But at the same time, if you do those things, they're going to come back for more work. And most organizations in the AEC world are very much built on repeat business. And so any project manager out there that says, I'm not really good at sales or I'm not doing sales, that's not accurate, because you're probably driving a lot of the sales for your company by just delivering great projects. And
Anthony,
so let's keep that in mind.
Two comments to respond to that. First, well over 80% of our business is with repeat clients,
Wow.
well over 80%. And if you think about it, 80%, that's a huge number.
Huge.
Across our 19,000 people across the United States. Secondly, I'll give you a little anecdote you might find interesting. Anytime I get a notice of an award inside the company, new project award, could be with an existing client, could be a new project, maybe something I was involved in the interface with the client. I'll congratulate our teams, and then I'll put in the next line in capital letters with an exclamation point, "Let's deliver." So to your very point, it's not lost on me, and I think I can speak on behalf of my peers, not only in our organization, but across the industry, delivering what we committed to in the pursuit phase, in the proposal phase, in the interview, in what we offered as our technical approach, technical solution, covering the things you mentioned, the quality of the services, delivery, responsiveness, ease of doing business with us. That's all wrapped into that capital letters, exclamation point, "Let's deliver." And I use that very point, with our developing professionals across the business as well. These are our 0 to 10-year experience people. I often tell them, look, maybe you're not quite at a point in your career where you're involved in proposals. You're not quite at a point in your career where you're being a seller doer, but everything you're doing every minute of the week in working on that project as an early graduate, as a developing professional, feeds into how the client views us as a provider, how the client views us as somebody that they want to turn to for future business. So I think your point, Anthony, is really well reinforced.
Yeah, that's great. We just won our first big government contract at EMI to train about 400 or 500 PMs for a government agency. And it's a big accomplishment for us. And I was really excited about it. But after about a week or two, I told our team, I said, now we got to deliver it, right? Now we got to do the work. So it's kind of like I was telling them, I know what it's like to win the Super Bowl, right? You win and you're excited. And then in 2 weeks, you're back in the gym and you're
Yeah.
back on the practice field and you're going again. But it is a good reminder that there are those accomplishments. You got a project, you got a client you want to serve. Now you got to serve them, right? Now we got to do the delivery and then hopefully develop that long-term relationship so they continue to come back and you can work with them for a long time.
And it's so rewarding when I get feedback in visiting clients about where we've done that well and when we do that well. And it comes down to personal commitment, usually of a project team that's very transparent with the client in terms of the schedule constraints, budget constraints, delivery, working to integrate and collaborate, sometimes with other parties outside of WSP. Frequently, we do that. When we have project leaders and teams of people that do that well, it's incredibly satisfying, and there's absolutely a connection. We keep our statistics between performance done well and that repeat business that I emphasized previously.
That's great. All right, Joe, I got two more for you. I got one on infrastructure, one on leadership. So first of all, you've been a strong advocate for sustainable infrastructure and the energy transition. How do you approach integrating these priorities into engineering projects in a way that's not just impactful, but also efficient?
The reason I'm such a big fan of sustainable infrastructure and energy security, grid resilience, energy transition is that in today's society, these are now connected. I think to a certain extent they become connected because of the complexity of projects, because of the inputs of stakeholders, because the traditional lanes of, well, that's just a road project. Well, not anymore. Now that road project needs to take into account, well, what's going to be the future travel? Is it going to be EVs? Are vehicles going to be connected in the future? Energy projects. Who would have thought that data centers and energy were going to be in the same conversation together in every conversation that touches the world of energy right now, the way it is here in 2025? So projects have gotten more complex. Clients expect us to be more collaborative, and people are now expecting that considerations are given to the future world. What is this going to look like in the future? It used to be 20 years ago, sure, we did life cycle analysis of a bridge or a road, but we weren't thinking about as much as we are today on societal impact. So within WSP, the way we approach that is through something we call Future Ready, where our projects are put through the lens of what are going to be the future conditions and future drivers that may affect this project. And we try to think of that through a technological lens. We think of that through a digital lens. We think of it through a user lens. And then we think of it through a societal lens and a climate change, future resilient world lens. And through that protocol, we're able to really shed light and advise our clients on the trade-offs between the cost of designing and building today in this way versus, well, if we give some future consideration to what might happen, it might configure this solution in a different particular way. So I think bringing that future lens, which by the way is very motivating, I think, to our developing professionals. They're early in their career. They see how the pace of technology, how use of visualization tools, virtual reality, now AI can shape solutions. And we're really calling on them and asking them to help us, work through this protocol of Future Ready with our clients on particular projects and particular needs.
Yeah, I think that's great because you're really taking a holistic approach, right? You want to be sustainable and you want to do it in a practical way so that you're meeting the needs of the clients, the environment, your
That's
team
it.
members who are looking to move in that direction. So, I really like that approach and I think it can be very valuable for all. Again, it's one of those win-win-wins, right?
Right.
If you can pull it off the right way.
Right. And, we try to make sure that folks understand a lot of what we do transcends a distinct regulatory environment. And that goes for environmental regulations or building codes or whatever. What we're doing in our job as engineers, particularly in a lot of the civil applications, is look to the future of a society future. What is transit rail going to be like in future? What are airports going to look like in future? How is VTOL going to change and drive airports and use of airports? And sustainability factors into that. So there's absolutely environmental considerations. Resiliency has both environmental considerations and, frankly, financial considerations. There are trade-offs there. And then the energy world is just so dynamic now with the mix between renewable energy, conventional energy, and how energy, particularly in the United States, is now permeating so many sectors of our business. So it's really a phenomenal time. I tell our early graduates, this is a phenomenal time to be involved in this particular industry and what we do.
Yeah, and I would imagine, Joe, that those client collaboration calls you mentioned earlier can get you a lot of good information for
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. And, so many people are sharing, so many of our clients are sharing their constraints, their challenges, their CapEx plans, their OpEx challenges going forward. Labor shortages are a key part of also challenges. Doing more with less, which has kind of always been true, but now AI and digital tools allow us to really unpack that. So where we can have that discussion transparently with our clients, going beyond just an individual project to how we're trying to shape them being more successful as the government agency or as a business is always rewarding.
All right, Joe, last question I have for you. Looking back on your 35 plus years in engineering consulting, for those civil engineers that are watching this and they're aspiring to become senior leaders in their organizations, what advice can you share with them just based on your own career development, leadership development? What advice can you share with them to try to develop themselves to be able to get to those senior leadership roles and be successful?
Yeah, a couple like tactical recommendations, Anthony, and maybe some philosophical things to talk about as well. So tactically, I tell all our early graduates, people at their early phase of their career, make sure you're finding a way to have a mentor relationship with somebody. I'm fortunate I had some phenomenal mentor relationships through my career. And I distinguish very much a mentor versus a supervisor. And the mentor is somebody that isn't necessarily the person that's guiding you through your compensation discussions. They're looking out at your career. They're looking out long term. Not that your supervisor is also not doing that, but your mentor can hold up the card and say, you're handling this really well. Here's some really important areas you need to improve. Hey, it sounds like you're really interested in this kind of area, this kind of development. Here's some things you're going to need to invest in yourself to get there. So first and foremost, invest in a mentor. Secondly, network, network, network. Recognize that you are your best network developer. Whatever organization, whatever institution you're involved in, they're going to help you provide a platform, but take advantage of those platform opportunities. Build your own network and then build your own brand. This is literally advice I give our young people. Build your own brand. Early in your career, how do you do that? Doing what you're asked, delivering on time, on schedule, on budget for the tasks and subtasks that you are involved in. Be a good teammate on projects. Don't be somebody that's going to drop the ball. Don't be somebody also that seems to only want to be in the spotlight all the time. So be a good team player. Um, Network across the organization by being curious. Learn from what different people do. Be curious in what their interests are, what their technical contributions are. Make sure you're always delivering. We touched on that a little bit already in terms of the importance of being somebody that's viewed as reliable, does good work, does good quality, always willing to take on the next assignment when asked. Don't be afraid to say you need help. Don't be afraid to say you need help. That's an attribute and a personal quality that we look at for some of our early graduates to kind of gauge how are they maturing in their career? How ready are they for new challenges and different challenges along the way? Next, be clear in what you think you have for career aspirations. And the way I advise people is, look, it's really hard to say what you want to do 20 years from now, but you can have a very helpful discussion with yourself inside, but with your coaches, with your mentors, with your supervisor. If you'd say, my next career opportunity, what I'd like to do is A, and then after that, I'm curious about B. And I think giving those kinds of boundaries to it, help your supervisor, help your mentors, help the people around you really gauge, what kind of things might interest you? What kind of zigzags might you want in your career progression? Or are you somebody who just wants to keep progressing perhaps through the technical avenues that are available to you? So then philosophically, in terms of career development, number one, there is an element to working hard in this business and in any business. And, that doesn't mean to extinguish work-life balance by any means. We're very big proponents of work-life balance. I personally am. But I don't know many people that have progressed to senior levels in our organization or any organization that don't work hard. And when the bell rings, they're there to answer the call and they're participating. They're there and they're working hard. There's going to be times in your career where that client deliverable, that project work just mandates you got to put in the extra time. And I think our very best people in this industry always answer that bell and answer that response. And then the very final thing about career development: be curious. Be curious on maybe some areas within yourself that you see as needing development to progress. I'll give you an honest one that I see often with some of our early graduates. It's developing communication skills, developing and learning how to stand in front of a room, how to lead others, how to get your mission done by working through others. These are some of the development skills that I think a lot of our early graduates are working on and progressing and developing capability on, that round them out such that they're not just great technical people, but they're also great communicators and they work well with others and people want to work with them.
Well, Joe, you just gave a wonderful checklist for the aspiring leaders to kind of walk through in their career and hit different points and skill sets that they can really build on. And I'll just say two that really resonated with me from my career was the one where you talked about communicating, not just externally, but internally in organizations, right? I mean, we do so many multidisciplinary projects that you have to be able, for me, like as a civil engineer in land development, I got to talk to the geotech team and the structural team. And those communication skills are so important. And the public speaking. I mean, I tell engineering professionals all the time, if you don't have a lot of time to develop your skill sets, focus on that one first, because to me, that's going to help you be a better communicator and build your confidence. And confidence to me is everything. Getting up in front of the room, being able to talk to people. So definitely spend some time thinking about some of those skills that Joe laid out. And those two, I could tell you, have been really helpful in my career. So Joe, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering CEO. Once again, he is Joe Sczurko. Joe's a licensed professional engineer, U.S. Regional President at WSP in the U.S. Joe, thanks so much for the time today.
Thank you, Anthony. Great discussion, great dialogue. I thoroughly enjoyed it and hopefully be useful to your viewers and listeners. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Joe. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Joe. A lot of great leadership thoughts there for those of you looking to develop. And if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help AEC professionals become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.